And we're back. Part 3. Hopefully this doesn't extend to part 4, but y'all know my camera. Let's get some light. Hold on a sec. There we go. Now, again, I want to say, the season has featured a number of people that are really known in pop culture, are part of the zeitgeist of what we are constantly being shown, and especially when it comes to certain people who are, sorry to say, reprehensible, in the case of Kevin Samuels. But I won't make too much mention. Again, I don't want to politicize my channel. And I don't know if necessarily I can weigh in, other than the fact that I did not agree with his so-called way of thinking and how he was encouraging other men. Like it was almost a terrible thing for a woman to be educated, to have studied, have acquired higher education, how it supposedly not work in her favor, and how she is depreciated at starting from when they were born. So a woman is depreciated the minute that she is born, and as she evolves, she just is more wasteful. Again, I'm not going to go into his preachings. He is featured in episode 9 of Atlanta, playing this Robert Shea Lee. And the irony here, this is the only thing I will say about him, is that he held his own in this particular episode. He was convincing in the role he was playing. Cameo, nonetheless. It wasn't like a whole full-on role, and he's not a recurring actor for the show, just for this particular episode. And then he died. He passed away at the age of 57, I believe last week. So literally days before this episode would air, which is a shame, because not for nothing, he had decent acting chops. And then other reviewers have mentioned that he had previous acting experience. Just goes to show, maybe the craft is not always connected to the person's moral compass. But what I will say is that if he had focused more on his craft as opposed to judging others, perhaps he would have been better liked. He probably would have had a better life. Definitely a better end. Sorry to say. Don't come for me, because I'm not privy. I didn't know anything. I'm just stating my opinions here, my point of view. And I think he would have been a happier person. Maybe perhaps even had some form of therapy, because I feel like there was a lot of repression there, a lot of resentment towards something. And he could have probably channeled that into his craft, as opposed to picking others apart, especially women, black women. Again, I know he had his followers, and that's neither here nor there. But not for nothing, there's already another one in his replacement. Some other person who's preaching some nonsense online. I will link all that information in the description box from what I've gathered on the whole, social media information, or news, if you can say. But bring it back to Atlanta, and I don't know, I'm not privy to Southern culture and history, other than the things that are pivotal to this country and history. But this is a positive, which I think this is what would go on and influence this episode, which I think it would have maybe even been a little better if they would have actually featured this particular person. This is Gary Chambers, and his powerful speech. This happened, I believe, pre-pandemic, a little before pandemic of COVID, and it was like at City Hall event and gathering, and it's titled here on YouTube. You can Google this, and I'll also link it in the description box. East Baton Rouge School Board members get told off by citizen Gary Chambers in powerful speech. And I believe he's running for a political office, I think in the state of Georgia. But listen to this very small soundbite.
Intended to get up here and talk about how racist Robert E. Lee was, but I'm going to talk about you, Connie. sitting over there shopping while we talking about Robert E. Lee. This is a picture of you shopping while we talking about racism and history in this country. Only white members of this board got up while we were up here talking too, because you don't give a damn, and it's clear. But I'm gonna tell you what the slaves, my ancestors, said about Robert E. Lee, since you don't know history, sister. Let me tell you that they said when he got the plantation, after he got off the field where 27,000 people died at Gettysburg, Connie, Robert E. Lee was a brutal slave master. Not only did when he whooped the slaves, he said, lay it on them hard. After he said, lay it on them hard, he said, put brine on them so it'll burn them. That's what Robert E. Lee did. And you set your arrogant self in here and sit on there shopping while the pain and the hurt of the people of this community is on display. Because you don't give a damn, and you should resign. You should have resigned 2 years ago when you choked a white man in his house. You should have resigned 2 weeks ago when you got on TV and said foolishness. And you should walk out of here and resign and never come back, because you are the example of racism in this community. You are horrible. Now to the rest of the board.
You are horrible. And I think that was the overall message for this. Like, there were a lot of it layered into this episode, but it was definitely influenced by this particular clip that went viral. Sean King shared it, all these social activists. It went viral to the point where he is known now because of it. And again, bravo to him for having set that woman straight. And yeah, how dare she be online shopping? Just the privilege, not giving a crap. Kind of like what I said in terms of episode 8, where Liam Neeson said that. Whoever wrote that line for him was like, that's the downside and the upside of being white. You could be taught something and you don't necessarily have to learn it. You know, you can shrug it off. And this person probably has been hearing horrible human acts throughout probably her whole lifetime, and probably that was happening at that current time, and she could care less. She was on there shopping. Now, how we relate it back to the episode is that, again, we have our Aaron character who is desperately trying to attend the same university, but you see all his peers, or who are expressing their exuberance and happiness because they got accepted to their favorite school. And believe it or not, most of them got some scholarships. Now, when they're in the auditorium and we are met with our Kevin Samuels character of Robert Shaley, and they changed the, because they were talking about or making reference to Robert E. Lee, and how he was, so they flipped the script, and our Robert character here is a well-known heir to this hair product for, I think, kinky hair. I'm not 100% sure. And it's supposed to feed oil or moisturize the hair texture. And he is an heir, so he's a multi-millionaire, billionaire, and decides that he didn't have a great experience when he was a student, and now he has come back and has wanted to, perhaps made a huge donation to now have that name removed and have his name appear in the building of a successful black owner, and that he was going to provide a full ride to college tuition to all the seniors of that particular class for that particular school. And while everybody's like, oh my God, Aaron is like having like a moment, right? Finally, oh my God, my dreams will come true. And then he makes that small interjection of, no, well, if you're black. And then all of a sudden it was just a small portion of the high school seniors, and then everybody else is like, now the connection here with Miss Connie, which I love. I'm sorry, the way he came for her, he read her for filth. Bravo. We need more people like that, especially in political roles in our government. Miss Connie. We see people very much like Connie, who are Aaron's peers, and even Aaron, to then poo-poo all over everybody who is black and is going to get a full ride to to college. Like, oh, can't you see them? Why they have to be so loud? And this is like 5 minutes ago, weren't you just doing the same thing? And you are going to college based on your scholarship. So again, moving forward, you can see that he's still upset Aaron, and then here is that there are auditions for the tuition. That's what the our Kevin Samuels character says. Like, well, we're hosting auditions at the end, or sort of interview, so that they can see if they could justify the person, the particular student can justify what they classify as their blackness, so that they can get a check to go to school. And we pan, and this is why I say definitely that the Glover brothers are in my age range, because there are instances like now all of a sudden everybody wants to be black because they want that check. They definitely want to go to school, so they are going to do as much appropriating as they can. We're seeing a tidal wave of people, of the student body of seniors who are not black, but and I'm surprised that nobody pulled out those DNA 23 and whatever, and ancestry, whatever, like kind of like what we saw in episode 4. But no, we see just a bunch of young teenagers trying to do like waves and cornrows. And there's a quartet, which is so funny because even though this is playing into the film scheme of Very Pleasantville. If you haven't seen that film, also I recommend it. Very black and white. And had this episode been shot maybe like in the 50s and 60s, we would have had like something similar of the Temptations and the Four Tops and whatnot. But since this is contemporary, and I guess this is now considered old school, would be the contemporary R&B. I think, what are they called? Hold on a sec. The contemporary boy group, the 90s boy group of Shy, I think they were called Shy, If I Ever Fall in Love. And you can see that these 4 boys are not African American. I think they could be Middle Eastern. I'm not sure. But they're doing their best cover, and that's what's so funny. So I would hope that this generation will Google that and get the joke, because that is what's supposedly traditionally showcased to us through our entertainment viewing, that this is what black culture looks like, or wearing the do-rag and whatnot. So here's Aaron in the midst of this and trying to convince these people to give him a check. And they call out to him, because it's like a jury of 3, and Kevin Samuels is in the middle, and he has these 2 other people who are like either family members or part of this team that is awarding these kids tuition money. And we can see one of them calls out to him, and he said red bone. Hold on. Which is a nod, and again, Donald Glover is known to make hints to his own songs in the show of Atlanta. But Redbone here is a term historically used in much of the southern United States to denote a multiracial individual or culture. In Louisiana, it also refers to a specific geographically and ethnically distinct group. So you hear one of them calls him in, hey, Redbone, come in here, whatever. And then there's a number of other derogatory terms that they throw at him. And the person that called out to him is the famous George Wallace. I've mentioned, if you are privy to BET Entertainment, and especially the comics that came out of that particular programming back in the day in the 80s and 90s, then you are familiar with George Wallace and how funny he is. And he has like a whole like head of gray, which makes him stand out because everything is so black and white. They ask him a number of absurd questions, like, what's a typical drink to go along or accompanies well with Hennessy, like stuff like that like makes no sense, but hella funny. And then at the end, George Wallace's character is the one that stands up and is like, you are not black, you are white, and how long have you been okay with passing, son? And then we see that he has been resting on his passing ability, and while he knew of that privilege, now that it's not working in his favor, you see how quick he is to flip. And there are a lot of people like that, unfortunately, in the world that only will embrace ethnicity or perhaps their own ethnic makeup when it benefits them. And there are a lot of them in celebrity, unfortunately. And again, I don't know also if that's not the overall consensus. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of people who are proud and are probably not even perceived by greater crowds or an audience because of their lighter complexion. And I think a lot of people have made mention that that could be a complex that perhaps Donald carries with him because of the choices, like his partner who he's chosen, who he's happy with. Again, who are we to criticize anybody's personal life? But because she is not a black woman, he has 3 children with her, he's been also really put under the microscope because of those things. So these are maybe, again, hidden complexes that what maybe Paperboy was kind of dealing with in the last episode. This is because this episode was written by Donald Glover. So again, maybe it's a form of catharsis for him to kind of get it out. And maybe this is how sometimes the general public may see him. Certain people may see him, or try to undervalue him because of that or his lighter complexion. Again, there's so many gems here, and there's so many layers of complexes and issues. So this frustrates our Aaron character, and he is denied, and he heads home all upset and preaches and is barking basically at his father, and then realizes his girlfriend is on social media and talking to another guy who looks like he will be attending the university, and he gets jealous and how she's flirting with him. They have a brief conversation on the phone where she breaks up with him because she's like, what's the point? You're going to be in another campus, or you can't afford it, and we might as well just break up. I think that is just like what sends him over the edge. And he decides to burn the school, and he makes, again, because that's what we have been seeing throughout the entire episode, or the very beginning, that video game of the fire thrower thing. So he does some like makeshift crap at home, and he goes walking because he doesn't drive. His father is the cab driver, and he's made mention that if I'm not driving you and you don't make it, take that bus. So this character has been walking around, probably on a bus in the street, with this whole contraption that you can see that he's not doing anything well with that. It's like a gas tank and attachments. Nobody stops him. And this was also very reminiscent of Kyle Rittenhouse when the BLM protests were happening. This boy was walking around with a whole rifle, and nobody stopped him. And he went and ended up killing about, I think, 2 or 3 people. And they went to court and whatnot. He killed 2 people, yes. He killed 2 people and was exonerated because of who he was, because he was white. For heaven's sake, he got funding by crazies online. So this was very reminiscent of that. He was walking around with all this and nobody stopped him. And then he's met with another student who was supposedly classified as not black because he is Nigerian. His parents had him in Nigeria, but he was raised here, so he doesn't necessarily speak the language, and all he knows is the United States. But because he is an immigrant, again, it also tells you what defines blackness. Again, this is why I said there's so many gems in this episode, that there's so many that you can grab from, and how even amongst ourselves we pick each other apart. And I've said this about the Latino culture as well, that we are not a monolith. We don't all think the same. We don't have this unanimous umbrella where we're all thinking the same. But very interesting take on that. And had they even interjected something like Afro Latinos, which is another layer of mess, I'm telling you. But there was so much, and there's only so much they can fit in 40 or close to 50 minutes per episode. But they're having this discussion, and there's oh, they didn't think you were black enough either. And then they're going back and forth between light and darkness. He still recognizes his privilege, Aaron, and throws a shade to him, or some comment about him being dark, dark skin, and he's like, is that a dark joke? And then they start throwing all types of flames back and forth. Finally we see the Nigerian character. He's on this rooftop and he's about to get him because his home, I don't know, makeshift fire thrower doesn't work all that great. He burned his shoes and feet. He's like, oh, that's it, I'm done for. And as he's about to point, he's like, oh, now you're in the black section of the school. He's about to point and shoot, and they shoot him. And the way it's shot, and you see like a burst of something spritz, you're like, oh my God. No, they did not kill. I was like, my jaw hit the floor like, no, they did not kill him. And then after you hear the shot is when you hear freeze or stop. And it just goes to show, this is where I said from my other clip that Aaron was under the impression, don't they tell you? Don't they warn you before they shoot? No, not in every case. Sometimes they shoot and then they ask questions later. It's ridiculous. That's not part of the training. And so then we come back, it fades to black, and we're like, no, they can't leave it like that. They come back, and then we realize that he had been shot in the arm, because honestly, that would have been too much. They definitely pushed the envelope, but that would have been way too depressing, too close to life. So he's shot in the arm and almost, being, transported to the hospital, the closest hospital, which is known in Atlanta as Grady Hospital. And now we see our Kevin Samuels character, and he's like, I think the blackest thing that you could get is shot by the police. So he awards him the tuition check, and then he makes sure that the ambulance EMT who's transporting him to make sure you take him to the white section of Grady Hospital. Make sure this boy lives. And he's like, what? And the driver's trying to act like he doesn't know. But again, every city and every urban city or neighborhood knows of that one hospital. I sure do. I'm not gonna name drop. But but we all have that there's a portion where people who are well-to-do and are light skinned will get better treatment to the people who are of poor resources and are darker skin will get the bare minimum, if that. So again, this episode was amazing. And then towards the end, and then Aaron is arrested, but he lives to tell the story. And we see that a year has passed, and now he's embracing his black culture. He's embracing his black ethnicity. He didn't go to school, but he's at like what I guess you can assume a Best Buy or something like that. And he's embraced it so much that he's got a fade. He's doing the whole like brushing of the hair. Didn't that remind you of Poetic Justice? Tell me if you haven't seen that film, please watch it. But that whole like brushing of the hair, the fade with that little comb, that little brush, you got to see it. It's very reminiscent of that. Tupac Shakur and Janet Jackson is in that film. Hold on a sec. And of course, Regina King. How could I forget Regina King? She's in that film as well. But he's hitting on a black customer, and then he sees his ex, and his ex is like, "Oh, so how are you doing?" And it seems like, they don't have anything in common anymore. But as he's embraced himself, he feels confident, and then he seems like he's macking with her again. And then he breaks the fourth wall, looks at the camera, very kind of like Michael Jackson at the end of Thriller, and then we play this song out, that 80s song. So it was an amazing episode. I swear they need an Emmy definitely for this episode, because there was just so much to unpack and very relevant to what is happening in current society. From the social media presence and influencers to the topics that nobody wants to really address, to even casting some of these people. It's amazing. I was really impressed. And I don't know how we're going to finish this season, because we are one episode shy of finishing, and we need to know what's going to happen to our cast. But nonetheless, I really hope you've enjoyed this review. If you like what you see, give us a like. Leave us a comment down below. If there's anything I may have missed, please let me know and feel free to leave a comment down below. If you'd like to follow me here on YouTube, hit the subscription button and the notification button so you can be alerted of my next review. I am going to review Candy on Hulu, which was another impactful miniseries, and definitely Ozark, which is, whew, what a whopper, but that's 14 episodes, so again, I'll be splitting that up. But nonetheless, wow, bravo to those Glover brothers. And let's play this out, y'all, with Hanging on a String by Loose Ends. Very 1980s, right? And not for nothing, I love my new lights. Again, you get this at any 5 and below, and they flash. Alright, y'all. Until next time. Till next time, XOXO, Nerdy Girl.